Hello and welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT EXILES podcast. My name is Rich Spate. I'm in Bethesda in northwest Wales, and I'm joined today on the podcast by John Stacey in Lincoln, Niall Bromley, who is down in Nice in France, and Michael Dunn, who's over the Irish Sea from me in Dublin. So just first of all, a bit about the podcast. This podcast is here to give voice to those Sunlun fans like us who don't live in the northeast of England, who don't live in Sunlun. A bit about our lives, our experiences, our time as Sunlun fans, and how we get to games, how we watch games, how we indoctrinate our kids into the tradition of supporting Sunderland. So, without further ado, we'll turn to John Stacey in Lincoln. You're right there, John?
Hello, Rich. Yeah, good, thanks. You?
I'm not so bad at all. I was at Burnley last night, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on, but a bit of a hoarse voice. Other than that, very happy man.
Yeah, not surprised.
So, John, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Like, obviously, you're over there in Lincoln. How come you're there and you're a Sunderland fan?
Yeah, so moved to Lincoln when I was about 7 or 8. The early 90s, but I'm originally from Wallsend. Cue the abuse on Twitter, but I still have a bit of an accent. It's just sort of lingering on. I was there as a lad with my family. My dad was a Sunderland fan all of his life. Didn't really give me and my brother a choice, obviously, and we started going to games, went to ROKER Park and fell in love. I mean, it's sort of, I'm sure anybody listening to this will know exactly the feeling you get when you watch Sunderland. You kind of get stuck with them. So we moved down to Lincoln, and we've just literally sort of tried to carry on going to games. We had season tickets when I was a lad growing up, so we'd travel up to the games, Stadium of Light when it opened and things like that. And yeah, just tried to keep up with it all. I don't get to as many games as I'd like anymore. Probably get to about between 5 to 10 a year. Obviously now we're in League One. It's slightly easier with some of the away games and things like that are more local to Lincoln. But apart from that, tried to get to a handful of home games as well. And yeah, I've been indoctrinating locals here and there. Quite a few in Lincoln. I think Danny Roberts, who's part of the ROKER RAPPORT crew, is also in Lincoln, and a few others. And yeah, it's quite a common thing, actually, believe it or not. There's lots out of the woodwork in the Lincoln and Lincolnshire area, and trying to sort of connect everybody a bit better. And this Exiles pod will hopefully help a bit more with that. But Lincoln's nice. It's all right.
We get around, don't we, Sunderland fans? There seems to be everywhere you go. What games have you been to this season? Or
you know what? I'm a bit depressed because I haven't been to any this season, but I'm going to Peterborough on Saturday, so I can't wait for that. If this pod goes out before Saturday, I'm excited about it. But yeah, I haven't been to any this season. I normally go to a few friendlies, but I just haven't had the chance. I've got a baby who's nearly 1, bless her, and it's just been trickier to get away to games. But last season I got to quite a few quite early, and then I had a massive stint where I couldn't go, and then towards the end of the season I went to quite a few. So there's a bit of a roller coaster there. I'm hoping to be a bit more consistent this year. I've planned out a few pretty much across the whole season. I've got 1 or 2 a quarter, should we say. So I've got kind of like a game a month potentially here and there, with a few months missing a few games. So I'm hoping to get up to 10 games this season, but we'll see what the missus allows. We'll see what money allows, and we'll go from there, really.
I think that's a lot of people's experiences, isn't it, of being outside of the northeast, is like you get to games when you can. I mean, going down into League One, for me, living in North Wales, it actually opened up probably more games than we'd had in previous years. You got Peterborough on your doorstep, and I bet you that's going to be a great game at the weekend, actually.
Yeah, we went to Peterborough last season we went to Peterborough game, and it was brilliant, and it's a relatively good experience there. It's not a massive ground, but it's a decent place to go, and it's not too far away. And I agree, moving away, it's more trickier to get to games, obviously, anyway, but we're not actually that far away in Lincoln, sort of 2.5 hours if you put your foot down. And trains aren't so bad, but you do have to go through mag country to get there, obviously. But I guess the sort of more of a downside is the fact that a season ticket, when you're miles away, is trickier to do every week, if you know what I mean. So I watch all the games. I try and get the streams. I try and get, the legal ways of watching the game, of course. Hopefully Charlie's not listening. But yeah, watch as much as I can, catch the highlights, and yeah, just try and the game last night it was annoying it wasn't on the stream, but I did catch the highlights. Just try and get as many 3 PMs as I can.
No, I think that's something they've got to sort out, because people were really clamoring to watch that match last night, and the fact that there was no screen, there was obviously cameras there. Sky Sports News were putting the goals up and incidents up throughout the game. But it was a shame that there was nothing sorted out for fans to be able to watch it online legally and follow what was a really good game. John, your experiences of of originally being from the region and then moving away. A little similar to mine and a bit similar to Niall's as well. We've got Niall Bromley over there in Nice in France. Are you still with us now?
I am. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm not so bad at all. The voice will hold out for this recording, I'm sure. I was screaming my head off last night. So, Niall, you're obviously, through your accent, a northeastern lad. So, where are you from originally, and how did you end up in Nice?
So I'm from Blythe, as many people know, and always try and take the mick out of. Basically, when I was a child, my dad lived all over when he was growing up. My granddad was on the docks, so my dad never actually had a team. Rangers is his team, but he just travelled around. He used to go to Preston a lot. And he moved up north with my granddad. They moved to Ashington, and then he eventually moved to Blythe. And when I was young, growing up, he was trying to brainwash me into football, which is what a dad tries to do with his son. But you couldn't get into Newcastle at the time. It was when, the glory days of Kevin Keegan and that for them. So you couldn't get in. So he took us to Sunderland, and I went to the first ever game at the Stadium of Light against Ajax, which was 0-0. So I don't know how I fell in love with it. Not a clue, because apparently it was a terrible game. But yeah, I went to that, and then that was it. Apparently, like he says, that the next day he asked us who my team was, and I said Sunlun. And then after that, he took us to the Reading game, which I think was the season after. I don't know why it took so long, but yeah, he took us to that game, the 1-4-2, and we were sitting like row 5 in the south stand, right behind the goal. And I remember the goals going in and just the feeling. And I think that was it, really. And I had a season ticket for 6 years. And then after that, just 6 years ago, I got the opportunity to go work abroad. And I took it. And I've been living abroad ever since. So it's a bit strange. I mean, when I come home every winter, so I come home sort of back end of October, early November, and I go back in January. So I get about 9-10 games a season, depending on how many home games I have. So last year I went every game when I was at home, which was great. Yeah, so I managed to go to quite a lot, and obviously I watch the streams. Obviously, with us being over here, I don't have to be in Alaska or Germany or anywhere like that. I can just be in France, so I get the games £6 a pop, but more often than not, it's worth paying the money, especially at the minute anyway. So obviously love the club, and simple as that, really. And it's under my skin, and yeah.
So you'd be trying to get to the Bolton match on Boxing Day then? Boxing Day was always a big one for me, when especially when I was at uni and coming home to my mum and dad's at Christmas. The Boxing Day match was great, so it's good that's going ahead.
Yeah, absolutely over the moon when I seen that news last night, because I don't think I've missed a Boxing Day match for 15 years or so, something like that. Like, I make a point of going, and it's an all-day piss-up, really, isn't it? And it's great. I'm delighted that we've got that Bolton game. I mean, imagine we didn't have a Boxing Day game at all. Like, even away from home, I get a little bit depressed when we're away from home on Boxing Day, but to not have a game at all, it would have been horrible. Like, so I'm delighted that they've managed to pull something off. And
yes, it's going to be good. I mean, the game against Bury was one that I was going to be going to, and that's been cancelled, hasn't it? That was on the 21st of December. So we are going to have a little bit of a winter break. Might actually stand us in good stead later on in the season, to be frank. But you've got that same tradition that I had as well. A couple of good mates. You've got Wetherspoons in town and then over to the match, and then end up either in the boarding or in the stables every Boxing Day.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I remember last year when we played Bradford, because my brother Connor, I normally go with him, but my dad was at work, so he couldn't come. And Connor had his season ticket seat, so I had to sit on my own up in the upper tier, and I had to sit on my own up there by myself, just, watching McGeady score and watching Bradford getting one, which was blatantly over the line, cleared off in the last minute. So it's a bit strange going to a game by yourself. I don't know if you've done it before, but it's not for me. Like,
I did it for the first time last night. For the first time I can remember for a long time. I think I went to a pre-season friendly against Hull way back. That's only because I lived around the corner at the time in Hull. That away game yesterday was probably the first one I've been to without my dad, or without one of my mates, or without my little boy. And it was quite fun, actually. It's a good thing to go and do on your own. Just a little bit mad, especially when you haven't got your dad or your little boy to kind of not embarrass yourself in front of. Basically, no, I quite enjoyed it, to be fair. But it's fantastic that game's going ahead, and I mean, good on Bolton. Losing them would have been a real shock. I mean, ex-Premier League team, And, you know, they're not a little club, are they? So I'm glad that they're being rescued and well, who knows what's going to happen with Bury. We'll see, won't we? But it looks like they're done and dusted. So we move on to Michael Dunn over there in Dublin, probably the closest out of all the exiles to where I live. How are you, Michael?
All right, mate. How are you? All good?
I'm not so bad, not so bad. So, Michael, how did you come to support Sunlun? We've got quite a few Irish fans. There's always a contingent. There's quite a big supporters branch over there. So what's your story, mate?
Yeah, well, obviously growing up in Ireland and Dublin especially, most people here supporting Liverpool, Man United, Celtic. So supporting Sunderland was a bit out of the ordinary growing up, but I got into it because of my dad growing up. I basically had no choice. Yeah, he wouldn't let me support anyone else, to be honest. So he was a big Charlie Hurley fan growing up. So I think the earliest picture that he has of me is kitted out in that. Is it the 1999 Reg Vardy jersey? And basically since then, I've been going over regularly enough. We had season tickets there for probably 6-7 years under Roy Keane. Some of those games were just amazing. Like the atmosphere, it was unreal at some of those matches. Basically just caught the bug. Essentially, yeah, I had no choice but to keep going.
So was that coming over like on the ferry or on the plane, or how did you manage to keep a season ticket going?
Well, there was regular flights to Newcastle when Roy Keane was there. You know, Michael O'Leary saw there was a book to be made there, so he had like flights on, day trip flights from over to Newcastle and back that night. So we went over. I think I went over most seasons 10 or 11 times. Then after Keane left, the fans started to fade away, so it got a little bit harder and a little bit more expensive to go over. But even after that, under Bruce, Spraygel, those lads, De Canio, boy, yeah, we went over 5-6 times still. But then we had the lean time under Moyes, and to be honest, I only went a couple of times then. It was just depressing under him. Wasn't great, was it?
It wasn't great at all, and I think a lot of us are in the process of rediscovering our love of football, really, from those miserable couple of years, if not longer. Certainly my experience, I was still trying to get to as many games as I could, but I wasn't going out my way to go to away games, etc. And I think that was the general feeling around the club. And it's fantastic that we've got a little bit of impetus back and just a bit of a team that we can enjoy watching, even if they're not always as successful as we want them to be, especially last season. Still better than watching dour football and a manager who doesn't look like they want to be there, particularly in Moyes' case. Fantastic that we have so many Irish fans. Do you get like to meet up with the other lads and lasses in Dublin and the area?
Yeah, so basically like what happened last year was that I was starting to go over the start of last year. I was starting to go over games on my own a little bit, just as you were talking about there earlier on, because I actually knew no Sunderland fans other than my dad in Ireland, and my dad was probably getting a little bit fed up of going over because I think he got sick of all the lean years. So I still had all the youthful enthusiasm to go over. Start of last season I was going over on my own quite a bit, but then I kind of just said to myself I might start up the Irish supporters branch again and see if there's any lads around. And to be fair, the response has been class. Like, so I was at the Rochdale game with a few lads from Cork and Dublin. I was there on Saturday game at Wimbledon, but I think sometimes last year we had 14, 15 lads coming over to games, especially those games in Wembley. So the response has been great. And then we've been meeting up regularly enough in Dublin. I think we met up for that Pompey game a couple of weeks ago, and I think we had 15 or 16 lads there again, which is like for Sunderland. It's not bad numbers, to be fair. Like, because we won't be the biggest over here, so it's still great. Like, just to go with a few lads, have a few pints, watch the matches, and then go over to a few games together. It's perfect. Like,
that's great. And I mean, I've thought about trying to get the Welsh branch going. Supposedly there are more fans in North Wales than there are in South Wales, which surprises me because most people are down in South Wales. And it's something I might pursue, I think, over the next few weeks and months. I mean, your experience shows that it can be done, and it's a lot easier for us to just get in a couple of cars and a minibus and get aeroplanes and ferries over the games. So inspirational, mate. Inspirational. So I think that probably leads into talking a little bit. But my experience, I mean, I'm originally from Sunderland, as I think I've still got just about got an accent, maybe a others are a better place to judge that than me. But originally from Sunderland, I grew up Silksworth School and then Farringdon. So I'm like South Sunderland lad. Went to ROKER Park for the first time, I think, when I was 5, when we were last in the 3rd tier. My dad got me in, I think, at half time for nothing at a game against Hull when I was about 5. I can just sketchily remember it. But then from like when I was 8, 9, 10-year-old, I was going ROKER Park every week. Probably the game that hooked me in and I knew I loved the club was the Chelsea quarter-final in the FA Cup. That cup run was something that I'll always treasure. Then I moved away to uni and didn't really ever move back permanently to Sunlun, and then met a lovely lass from North Wales, moved down here, got married, and have 2 kids, the eldest of which is not particularly interested in football. He's more of a cyclist. And the youngest is absolutely football mad. Really, it's been having him around and wanting to go to games and trying to indoctrinate him into the club and keep him out of the clutches of Liverpool, who are the dominant force around here in terms of fans, has become a little bit of a mission over the last year or so. So I took him to Shrewsbury for his first ever game, which was a fantastic place to go for an away game. We went to the stadium like 3 times together, went to Wembley twice. And he's currently at the Beacon of Light doing a 3-day soccer camp while we're on a little bit of a break from him. And he's staying with his nana and granddad up in Sunlun. So it was actually the experience of trying to get my little lad involved in sport in Sunlun that inspired me originally to start a little podcast called ROKER Exiles. And then, as Brett mentioned in last week's Exiles pod, the ROKER Rapport lads advertised for people to get involved with their podcasts, and from that I got in touch with them, and we put this team of 12 lads from around Britain and the rest of Europe together for this pod. As I was talking about earlier, I was at Burnley last night for my first ever game on my own. I got out of work at 4:30, jumped in the car, and it was 2.5 hours from me, from Columbia, where I work, up to Burnley, skirted around the traffic and got there in plenty of time. And it was a great game. First thing I saw when I got there was the team sheet, and I was interested to know from you other lads what you thought when you first saw it last night with the 8 changes. Did you think that we were in with a chance?
If I'm being brutally honest, right, when I seen Flanagan and Baldwin starting at the back, I was thinking 6s and 7s. I'm not even lying. I looked at their team sheet, and I know Vidra's been on he's having a bit of a tough time over there, isn't he? And I thought the amount of goals he scores in the Championship when he was at West Brom, when he was at Derby, Watford as well, I think in the Championship, I thought he's going to bag some goals, like J. Rodriguez as well. I really did. And when the first goal went in, I mean, I was sitting there thinking, I'm not even going to check the score. That's, we're going to get hammered. So, yeah, to be honest, we all knew that the team sheet was going to be like that. I think Jack Ross had said in his interviews before the game that it was going to be a team which was competitive, but it wasn't going to be, it was going to have changes in it. Chris Maguire said the same thing when he was interviewed, that he said it was a bonus game. So, we knew it was going to be changes, but now it's, I'm as shocked as anybody to see, the performance and obviously the result in the end. And I think it's going to give Jack Ross one hell of a headache. It really is. It's a good headache to have, though. Especially as a fan, as us watching on, it's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're at the game, Rich, so I haven't seen the 90 minutes, but from what I've read and what I've heard, apparently Baldwin and Flanagan headed every single ball.
Well, it was a shaky start, and their goal, I think, it exposed that their League One centre-backs got drawn to the ball. Somebody didn't track, I think it might have been Hume, didn't track Rodriguez back and cover, and it looked at that point like they would fall apart. And I have to say, I was very worried. But through the game, I think the big turning point for me in that match was after they'd scored the first and they were putting us under pressure and we looked like we might crumble. And then, I don't know if you've seen the highlights of it, when they hit the post twice, was it Lennon missed an open goal? That turned the game. And that, I think, gave them a bit of a kick up the backside, and from then on in, they grew with confidence. And in the second half, they were dominant. I mean, they threw on Wood towards the end, and he caused them trouble. he got in and about. He's a quality player, but they dealt with it, and they look good. Flanagan was probably the more confident of the two, but he's played more often recently, I guess. I thought McLaughlin as well worked well at right back. It seems his natural position. He was not remarkable, which is what you want from your right back, I guess, when you're playing the 4-4-2. He didn't really have to bomb forward, but I'm sure he pinged one out from right back down to left wing, which was a quality ball. I had to double check with the lad standing next to me that he'd actually kicked it and it wasn't someone else. Yeah, it was a really good performance by them too. The highlights, John, have you seen anything?
Yeah, I saw the highlights today. To be honest, I echo everything you've both been saying. From the looks of what had happened, there was definitely some Benny Hill moments from Flanagan and Baldwin, and that was expected looking at the team sheet. But I think definitely the hitting the post twice definitely was a stroke of luck that we don't normally get as Sunderland fans. I think everybody will agree that a lot of the times when we need a bit of luck, especially last season, second half of last season, just didn't seem to go our way, refs against us, etc. Yeah, seeing that was quite refreshing, but more than anything, like you say, the actual seeing it and then responding to it was the big thing. We've talked a lot, and I'm sure a lot of Sunderland fans are thinking the same, but when we need a response, we don't often get it. The attitudes are poor and people's heads are down, and it was when I saw kind of simultaneously on Sky Sports News last night that the Mags went 1-0 down and then Grig's name come up. I was thinking, is this for real? This is too good to be true, this. But yeah, obviously Grig needed it. You could see it in his face, didn't want to celebrate. I think it was a massive weight off his shoulders. But again, for that goal, it was a massive stroke of luck. It ricocheted off about 4 players. Good work in the build-up, don't get me wrong, but how many times have we said great build-up and no final product? So yeah, I think that was really lucky and really good. We needed it. I mean, imagine if he'd skied it over or something. Could have been a total different game. But I was just saying, having said that, I think looking at the team sheet again, my opinion of the team sheet when I looked at it again was a similar one to Niall's. I kind of thought to myself, I'm kind of glad there's not a stream, but at the same time, it looks promising from a strength point of view, a depth point of view, from the midfield upwards. Dobson and McGeoch coming in, arguably, 2 of our best centre midfielders. And we talk a lot about Jack Ross trying to get the right centre midfield partnerships, and if he's happy with Power and the way that he's got it working at the minute with the team he's got it in with Ledbetter, that's fine. But it's the legs. I mean, I don't know what you think, Rich, because you were there, but judging it on Ledbetter and Power and the legs that Ledbetter doesn't have alongside Power, and he's running around loads, versus what were Dobson and McGeoch like as far as a partnership and their legs and their energy, and how was it working? Did it work as well or better or worse than Ledbetter and Power?
I have to say I was mightily impressed with the 2 of them as a pair. They seemed to work very closely together. They hunted in packs. They had to. It was a very high energy midfield. Obviously, we had 09 sitting in front of them. At times, he was playing up front with Grig in a 2 at times during that game. But obviously, his standard position was slightly in front of the 2 of them. But I thought McGeoch was very, very, very steady. He's the engine room in that lineup. He worked very well. He worked hard. He was effective. We didn't give away a lot of fouls, which I was very impressed by. They were tenacious. They were getting their foot in. They weren't sloppy with it. They weren't jumping in. Dobson looks a very, very good player, I have to say. I know he's got the pedigree, coming through a couple of Premier League clubs before he was at Warsaw, and I think you can see that he's trained with at a good academy with some good players, with good coaches. He looks the real deal. In this league, I don't think you're going to find a better centre midfielder, and when he's driving forward, he looks very impressive as well. Obviously, the goal was a seriously top quality finish and a lovely little move. I mean, I couldn't quite believe it. I was watching Sunlun when that corner came in and he flicked it out, and then it was pinged in the corner. It was fantastic, and the crowd reacted to it, and it was fantastic to see at the end of the game the reaction that the crowd, the travelling Sunderland fans, gave to Dobson in particular. He was like last man off, and he got a massive cheer after everyone else had a massive cheer as well. you can see that he's getting the bug, and he gets it in a bit in the same way as when 09 came on and scored at Shrewsbury last season. It's when he seemed to get it. He got what playing for the club was about. He showed his passion. So there's a similar one to that. Michael, what did you think of that forward line?
Just echoing what the lads are saying there, actually, just a bit Grigg as well. I'd say it must be an absolute relief for him to get that first goal this season. I was watching him there last weekend at the Wimbledon match, and I actually felt sorry for him, because there's a couple of times where he was making the correct runs. He was doing everything right. He had one serious chance there in the second half against Wimbledon, didn't he? When he got the ball, turned on his right foot, open goal, and he just blazed it over. I was just thinking, this chap is really like at the bottom of his confidence. He's just, I was just thinking this is just not going to be his season, especially with Charlie White, the way Charlie White has started. Actually, you're just thinking if White continues the way he was going, there's probably going to be like very few opportunities for Grigg to start matches this season. But just on top of that, I don't know what you saw when you were at the game, but when I was there, I was watching the highlights. I saw Gooch seemed to be playing quite well. He seemed to be getting a lot of ball and putting crosses into the box. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't be the biggest fan of Lyndon Gooch's, but I actually think he's had quite a good start to the season. He's been kind of driving at teams quite well, doing what he does best, and getting some good crosses in. But I don't know what you thought about that.
The things that stood out with Gooch last night were he was very tricky. He was trying things that, again, maybe you might not see in a league game against, I don't know, Accrington away. He was trying to show his ability on the ball, dribbling, and driving on. No, he looked really good. I mean, I'm a bit of a Gooch fan, I have to say, but I know he divides opinion. I like players with work rate first and foremost, and I think you can't deny that he gives his all. He was involved in the goal, the second goal, getting the shot away. He did pretty well, I have to say. And on the other side, Embleton looks a player. Again, he wasn't involved quite as much as some of the other players like Dobson, but he looks very good. I know he's very, very well thought of, and I suspect that when Donald was talking about some of our young players who other clubs were, Premier League clubs were sniffing about in the summer, he might have been one of those, because he's in England setup, isn't he, in youth setups, and I think he's a definite one who, through the season, could actually be that player who gives us a little bit extra off the bench even. And how Grigg looked last night was like someone who really wanted to take his opportunity, and actually, again, someone, and I think this goes for the whole team and the whole attitude to that game last night, which was that you've got 8 lads there who were brought in who think that they should be playing in the first team every week, and they wanted to go and prove it. And Grigg was absolutely top of that list in terms of, again, work rate, fantastic. He was run the lines, he was getting some great positions. He tried some things that didn't work. It was funny because before the match, when they were warming up, taking shots, not all of them, should we say, were going in from Grigg, and some of them weren't getting on target. And I think some of the fans were getting a bit nervous about him. And then when the ball fell to him, it wasn't immediately clear exactly how it had got to him. So I think half the fans thought it might be offside, but it obviously was off the defender. And then he seemed to have, I thought for half a second, he's got too much time here, but he picked his spot and he finished it. He finished it really well. 09 had not he had a chance not from a dissimilar position a little bit before that, but I thought Grigg was really good when White came on. He had a good 15 minutes on the pitch and looked, as others have said, trim and fit and up for it and strong. And he was being fouled by their centre back. Seems to be a consistent thing with Charlie White, getting fouled and not getting the decisions. And then 09, who's my favourite player, he had a good game. I don't think he's going to do enough to displace McGeady Maguire from being the person sat behind the centre forward. But he looked like he wanted to play there. That's obviously his natural position, or where he's played before he volunteered to go in at right back. I would be very disappointed if I was him, and I wasn't in the starting 11 against Peterborough, but I can see that McLaughlin has put down a bit of a marker there as a right back in terms of just being steady away. Now, obviously, I was sat at the back, or standing at the back of the stand, singing my heart out, so I might have missed a few bits and pieces of the game, but that was my overall impression of it, which was a very confident performance, and I was excited by it. And I think the problem of having two winning teams to choose from, you don't change a winning team, but what happens when you got two of them that have won the last game, is a good headache for Jack Ross to have going into Saturday.
Just coming in on that, I think it's kind of a big headache for him, definitely, but also a little bit worrying. You've got to think about, I know I'm sounding quite negative when I talk like this, but you've got to think about those that have played really well, like you touched on it there, and some of them might not get a game on Saturday because of the league team that won last week, etc., etc. Thinking like a Nyan at right back, if Conor Mack had a good game, is Ross going to shift into left back where he's been really poor because he's worried about Hume, even though Hume had a good game last night? Is Maguire fit, or is he just playing mind games by Ross saying that we've picked up a knock, and therefore if he isn't fit, is a Nyan going to play in that role and McGeady on the left? Have we got another winger? Would Embleton come in? Is McNulty fit yet? There's all these questions, and all I'm thinking along the whole sort of agenda of it all, if you can guarantee that John McLaughlin's coming back in, the two centre backs will be replaced by Oz, Turk and Willis. Where does Lynch come into that as well? And then you've got kind of everywhere else on the pitch. Maybe White could obviously come straight back in as well, but everywhere else on the pitch, you're worrying about people who've played pretty well, and they're going to have the heads dropping because they're out straight out of the team. Now, I know it's a squad game, we've got a load of different games coming up, but Dobson in particular, if you think he played really, really well and really got the bug for it and stuff like that, he's a 21-year-old lad. I certainly want to be playing more often. I mean, we've seen Embleton's head drop a bit when he got dropped, and I just think there's a slight worry there that yes, it's great having all these players that are winning and doing well. Is that something to worry about on top of it with the whole attitude side of things, or will they just all get together as a squad? And I hope it's the latter. I hope they'll all just come together as a squad. They'll be happy in and out of the team and playing semi-regularly, knowing that injuries will come and stuff. But I wouldn't want to be the one picking an 11 on Saturday. Definitely not.
What are your thoughts, Niall, on that?
Yeah, it is. I totally agree with everything John said, to be honest. I don't think you can drop the team that won at Wimbledon. I think the team, surely there must have been an understanding, the team which played last night, that it was their chance, but, they're not going to drop the first team for the next game. I don't think anybody expected us to win the game how we did last night, and now it's happened. Obviously, I don't know what training tomorrow morning are the players going to be, I just marked 2 Premier League centre forwards last night and did really well, so surely I should be on the team sheet for next week. It's going to be horrible for Jack Ross, but this is where we'll see how he is as a manager. This is, the decisions he makes. For me personally, I think that Jordan Willis is our best centre-half. I love the way he plays. I watched the game against Wimbledon on Saturday. I thought, the way that he races out to win headers, we don't have many centre-backs that do that. We don't have many players that do that. And you can see him racing for the ball, and he just looks like he's always got that extra yard on strikers as well. I don't know if that's just natural, but that's the way it looks when you watch him. And he has to be in every team. And like you say, how can you drop Ozturk? He's had a really good start. I totally agree with what John's saying. I'm glad I'm not Jack Ross when it comes to Saturday, because it is going to be tough for him. But if it was me personally, yeah, I'd have to stick with the team that played against Wimbledon on Saturday. I can't see, I don't think it's fair to drop them lads, because these lads were in because he didn't want to play them lads. So surely they'll know that. We'll have injuries. We're going to last season we played 62 games. We're going to play a lot of games in football, and at the end of the day, we will have injuries. And these players, Jack Ross now knows, and they know that they'll be first to call on when needed, when injuries come in. And I think that's the mindset these players have to have, because the first team's done so well so far. Yeah, you can't drop them. So for me personally, I think he's got to stick with the team that beat Wimbledon at the weekend.
My opinion on sticking with teams is that it's a nice maxim, never change a winning team. But my cliche is horses for courses, really. You got to look at the opposition, and they've got all the stats, they've got all the analytics. Get the players in who are going to win each game, because we have got a lot of games. And when Ross was interviewed on, I think it was on Radio 5 last night after the match, he was talking about the number of games we've got. Personally, I'm not a football manager. We're all play football manager, etc., but I'm not a football manager. But if I was, say, Max Power, I would be worried about my place on Saturday. I think as good as Power's been in the last couple of games, I thought Dobson's performance last night was next level in terms of, if you're going to look at somebody who won their place in the starting 11, for the league team, George Dobson was head and shoulders above probably, I would say, any other player on the pitch last night, because despite them having however many ex-England nationals in their squad, and cost however many millions of quid, in the end, pretty roundly beaten by us. Second half, they didn't offer anything, and it was a large part to do with how dominant our midfield was. Michael, what do you think about Saturday coming and the selection headache that he's got?
I would agree with the lads, to be honest. Most of that I wouldn't really be changing too much, because the lads over the last few weeks, they've been starting the Wimbledon game, the Rochdale and the Pompey game have been quite consistent. Probably our best run of form now since the season started. So it'd be quite tough on the lads that have been starting those games to be taken out. But as the lads are saying, I don't envy Jack Ross in this situation, because by the sounds of it now, I didn't see the whole game, but Dobson was excellent last night. O'Nien was really, really good behind the striker. I'm a massive fan of McGeoch, to be honest, and I just don't understand why he's not starting more games. If I was making a change, I'd probably bring McGeoch into midfield. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly or not. Saturday coming, I think, could be potentially one of our toughest games so far this season as well, because I think over the last 3 games, Peterborough have scored 8 or 9 goals to beat MK Dons 4-0 away last week. And, our favourite rival player is Marcus Maddison, it seems, with all the fans. And he seems to be in the form of his life at the moment. But selection-wise, I think I won't be changing too much for the weekend. But if I was looking at a couple, you might be saying maybe McGeoch to come in. Just that's more personal favouritism. And I think, to be honest, there's not too much between Hume and maybe Conor Mackin at left back as well. I'm not a huge fan of Hume either yet, but he's still a young lad, so maybe give him a couple more chances as well. I wouldn't be too against Denver Hume starting, but about the game, I think it's going to be a tough match. It could be potentially, without being negative, could be potentially our first defeat of the season. I just worry about Peterborough. They seem to always start really well, and they kind of fade off near after Christmas. But the way they've been playing the last few weeks, I'd be worried about it, to be honest.
Can I just add something that we haven't spoken about yet? The eternal question of Grant Ledbetter. And I just feel like, what Michael was saying there struck a chord with me a bit. I love McGeoch as well. And if he's played well last night and Dobson's played out of this world, talk about Max Power being scared of this position. The last few league games, I've not been a huge fan of Grant Ledbetter. Load of mistakes, loads of passes into nothing. So what does everybody think about Grant? Should we kick him out or what? Because we've got 3 players trying to play in that position.
One thing I think Ledbetter's always had to his advantage is obviously his quality when it comes to delivering a set piece. And last night we had that. We had the set pieces. We scored off 2 without him on park. So I mean, I talked my dad after every match, and when I spoke to him last night, he said, "How was McGeoch?" And I said, "Well, he seemed to run the show." And he said he does it every time he's on the pitch. And if he keeps doing it, and the feedback that we hear and from what I've seen, if he's doing it every time he's on the pitch, and we've got doubts over Ledbetter, I can see him taking his place. I don't think he'll stick with the team that beat Wimbledon. I think he'll go with Peterborough, but we'll see. So we're going to finish up there. And it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you listeners and to speak to John. See you later, John.
Cheers, Rich. Thanks very much. It's been a lovely pod. All the best for Saturday. Let's hope for a win. I'm sure we'll get an awesome win. Michael's talking out of his arse, really, when it comes to Marcus Maddison. He's rubbish. I hate him. No, he's probably going to score 3 past us now. I've said that. But cheers, Rich.
You're going to be there, so enjoy the match, man.
Yeah, I'll try my best.
And see you later, Michael.
Cheers, mate. Enjoyed that. Hopefully I'm wrong about Saturday anyway.
Absolutely. And we've lost Niall. His phone died, and his Wi-Fi isn't strong enough to keep this conversation going. So we've lost Niall, but thanks to Niall Bromley over in Nice as well. That was the ROKER Report Exiles podcast. We'll speak to you again soon.